It's time once again to look at the latest power rankings posted by The Athletic and see where each team is ranked after yet another week of MLB baseball. Which teams have dropped off ever so slightly, who's propelled themselves to the top of the conversation, and let's get involved in everybody's favourite subject right now. What's happening to the Houston Astros? So let's not waste any time, let's jump right in and let's talk baseball. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to Let's Talk Baseball. I'm your host, Tom Scholes, and today we're going to look through the Athletics' latest power rankings. It's been a few days since he actually posted them, so we'll start from the bottom again. Start from the bottom and work our way up, kind of deciding the rankings as close to current time as possible, but also, things like who they got wrong, who have they messed up on in terms of their evaluation of. There's one team we're really going to get stuck into that I think a lot of people will enjoy of certain fan bases. So number 30, again, is the lowly, terrible Chicago White Sox with a 3-22 record. They're Detroit Pistons bad. They are disgracefully bad. It's embarrassing to see how bad this team is, and I feel for the fans because there's nothing worse than having a bad team and having it coupled with a front office that clearly doesn't care, that really is not fussed one way or another about the success of the team. It must be really disheartening to be a fan of the White Sox right now. The same goes for the Rockies and the Marlins. The Rockies with a 7-19 record, the Marlins with a 6-20. It's impressive how much dross this league has managed to propel with us this year. Normally the thing is, in American sports, there's always a handful of teams that are always bad. Or rather than the same teams being bad, there are always bad teams, is what I mean. And this is no exception. The difference is, I think there was a lot of people that expected the Oakland A's to be rock bottom. And it's actually quite impressive that there are 3 teams significantly worse than they are. And the A's aren't a great team, but they're not the worst, and they're not awful either. The A's are 27th on their rankings with a 10-16 record. They've just come off of taking 2 games off of the Yankees. We'll get into them later on. There's a lot of things to get into with that. But for the A's, amid all of what's going on with the turmoil surrounding their move away from Oakland, a potential move to Sacramento in the meantime before going to Vegas, something we've talked about on this channel before, there's something about this team that they seem to be putting in a good effort, and they're not a terrible team. I'll give them that. They're not awful. And as the piece says, look, this isn't great for the Athletics, but at the time of writing, which I think it was 2 days ago, so about April 20th, 3 days, I think it was April 23rd it was, the A's are 30th out of 30 teams in contact rate on pitches in the strike zone, contact rate on pitches out of the strike zone, and contact rate in general. And what I've noticed about this team from watching them against the Yankees recently has been they offensively are not great. Brent Rooker's a good player. He can help massively, but the core of their positivity comes from the pitching side of things, and specifically Mason Miller, because my God, what a pitcher he is. He came in a closing situation against the Yankees not too long ago, and he had, I believe it was Volpe, Soto, and Judge he had to come up against. Smoked them all, 100 miles an hour on multiple pitches, and he just embarrassed them. And you watched him and just go, come the trade deadline, somebody's going to acquire that guy, and they're going to get an absolute stud in their team. I was so impressed watching him. Really big fan of what I've seen from him so far. And I think if there is a bright spot within this A's team, it is him, because he is fantastic to watch. Absolutely brilliant pitcher. Really suits modern pitchers who prioritise things like the velocity and the MPH of their pitches. And he just blew him away. There was nothing they could do to handle it. Up next is the A's with a 10-15 record. Minus Mike Trout, they're an awful team. Not much more to say about them, other than, Mike Trout has been fantastic this year. He's on his usual Hall of Fame level path, and he's just a really, really good player. Really, really good. Pretty much the only bright spark in this team. Yeah, it's bad. It's a lot of these teams are bad. And, like 25th is the Nationals with a okay-ish record of 10-14, which isn't bad in comparison to the other teams that have been on this list. But, CJ Abrams with a 676 slugging percentage has been really, really good. And he's slowly emerging himself as what you see players and you look at them and go, oh, you could be a really good player. You could end up being a star in this league. And I think maybe not with the Nationals, but at some point that lad is going to be a great player to be involved with and have on your roster. He was involved in the Soto trade. He was the centerpiece of the trade when the Padres took him from Washington. And he's developed into a good player. He's developed into a good hitter. He's he was a top 10 prospect, and he's come up, and I think he's, specifically at the start of this season, he's done really well to kind of show what he's really made of, be a really good performer. The only thing is, as the piece in The Athletic mentions, they call it a free swinger. So when he does make contact, it's a good swing, and when he doesn't make contact, it's going to be a problem. But I think that's the thing that comes with most players at young ages. Also massively fast as well, which is always a good. I think we're seeing more players like that now who can hit for power, but are also really quick. 24th, the St. Louis Cardinals. They're in a bad way. The Cardinals are in a bad spot. Their pitching is. I'm not a fan of their pitching staff at all, and I feel like it's going to be a really weird situation for them. They're not good at all. It was a weird off-season for them. I weren't a fan at all. 23, the Pittsburgh Pirates. They started off in 9-2 and then regressed back to the Pirates with a 2-9 stretch. Yeah, I'm not involved. Not involved in the Pirates. Another team that I can live without. They're not making me want to watch them. I know that's bad, but I have a thing for the Pirates where, not a soft spot as such, but I look at them and go, they have the potential to be such a really popular franchise, a really popular team. You look at that stadium they have, and it's amazing. You look at the jerseys they have and the logos they have, and it's like it's built to be a super duper franchise, and it just feels like every time you're on the cusp of it, something ruins it, and that something tends to be themselves. And it's like, O'Neal Cruz is a fantastic player, but he has a 40.2% strikeout ratio. He's good, but you can tell something isn't quite right, and you can tell that he's not within himself at the moment. And I think that feels like a thing for the Pirates, where they're good, but there's something stopping them from going to another level. I think that would be something they'll need to address at some point. And they can't keep being this team that isn't great forever. There needs to come a point where the switch is flicked and they just become a all-round better outfit. The Twins are another team that confuse me a little bit. They've got an 11-13 record. The Pirates have a 13-13 record now. The Twins have 11-13. They dropped down in the Athletics rankings 4 spots from 18 to 22 in the past couple of days. But hitting-wise, they are pathetic. The Twins, offensively, are pathetic. Nothing going their way whatsoever. And yeah, you've got Carlos Correa's injured, Max Kepler's injured, Royce Lewis is injured, Matt Wallace has been demoted to the minors, I believe it is. And when they won the AL Central last year, they were an offensively really good team. But what made them offensively really good is not what we're seeing now because of the situation they find themselves with injuries and lack of confidence and whatnot. And their team batting average is .195. .195. The stat here from the Athletic piece is, of the 13 position players currently on the Twins' active roster, more than half of the batting, more than half are batting below the Mendoza line, and only 3 of them are above 250. It's the kind of thing to make you take your glasses off and scratch your eyes in amazement, because that team is stinking. It's just not very good. It isn't great whatsoever. And I feel like when they get certain players back, it will become a bit better to look at. And you can see when Kepler comes back, when Correa comes back, when Lewis eventually comes back, whenever they may be, they'll be a lot better to watch and a lot better to evaluate. But right now, awful team. But what the Twins were last year were exciting. And what the 21st place team on this list, the Giants, were last year, were boring. They were dull. Nothing happened. They've revamped their lineup. They brought in Blake Snell, and they haven't really improved all that much. They currently sit the 21st on the MLB Athletic rankings. They have a 12-14 record. They've gone up in the rankings in recent weeks. You've got a team that can't hold on to a lead. The bullpen has the second worst ERA in the MLB this year. Offensively, they're better. And what I think the positive to look out for is they've got good pitching. You know, Blake Snell hasn't been good at all. He's now injured. He's on the IL. Logan Webb is an ace. He's a fantastic pitcher. Really, really good. Really good to watch him play whenever we're able to watch him at a reasonable time. A notable stat here. Percentage of inherited runners that are allowed to score. 54%, which is the highest in the league. The bullpen may even itself out across the season. This is a very small sample size. Yes, 14% of the season has gone, but at some point, it might even itself out. It might do. No sign of that happening just yet, but it'll come soon. It'll come good, because that's what happens in this league and in this sport. 20th are the Tigers. They're another odd team where I see some bits of them and I'm like, okay, their bullpen is great. Their ERA is fantastic. The only thing that's keeping them from being top is Zach McKinstry has a 54 ERA. They're a good team in that regard, but not fantastic in any sense of the word. I think they're middling. I think they're in a division that actually helps them. The fact that they're in the Central, the AL Central, helps them not be terrible. Because I don't think they are a terrible side, but the situation they're in helps them massively. In sense of they can perform well and not have to worry about maybe missing out on a division or something along those lines. Now, I've just seen the list. Tied 18th. We'll start with the first one. We'll start with the first team that is tied 18th, and then we'll move on to the main event. Tied 18th in the MLB Athletic Power Rankings is the 13 and 11 Mets. I've been pleasantly surprised by the Mets. I think a lot of people have. I was listening to the Baseball is Dead podcast, the most recent one, about like Jackson Holliday and his rough start, and they started talking about the Mets. And one of the things that they said was they're playing well and they're picking up good wins against good opposition, but they're not really, they're not doing anything to make you think that in the long term they're going to be good and they're going to be interesting. But the Mets don't care. They're picking up wins, and they might actually become like a sneak pick for the wild card later on in the season if this continues. So the Mets have been pleasantly surprised with the other tied 18th team, the Houston Astros, who have been horrific this season. The Houston Astros have a 7-19 start. They should actually be lower on this list. I think the only reason they're not lower on this list is because there's a reputation around them, and everyone is kind of going, you know what? They're the Astros, they'll pull through. But they lost last night 3-1 to the Cubs. I've typed into Twitter, just Astros. I'm going to come up with a lot of good stats here that will tell you just how poor they are. They have the fourth worst record in the league. They have the fourth worst record in Major League Baseball. It goes the White Sox with 3-22, the Marlins 6-20, the Rockies 6-19, the Astros 7-19, and the A's 9-16. The bottom five in terms of run differentials go White Sox minus 85, Rockies minus 57, Marlins minus 47, A's minus 40, Astros minus 36. Munston has a problem, and we've only just got into May. Oh my god, it's so fun to see. Now I'm going to split this into two different categories in terms of how I view it. The Astros are a team that is coming towards the end of their cycle, and as a fan of the Astros, how would I look at this? Well, I'm not a fan of the Astros, so I don't really care, but let's be neutral for this one. The things that built their team and built their success are no longer there. A lot of good players are not performing to the level they should be. Bregman, Abreu, to name just two. Jose Altuve is still fantastic, but overall, they're just not performing to the level that many people expected them to. But the pitching is awful. The pitching is terrible. Christian Xavier is on the injury list. Framber Valdez is on the IL. Justin Verlander is just coming back. But it feels like with the Astros, it's more of a structural issue within the organisation more than anything else. And then on the other side of things, I look at it as someone who enjoys seeing them terribly. They've lost 12 of their last 15 games. And it's delightful. It's delightful to see. Because this is what happens. Yes, this is a team coming towards the end of the cycle. But they have fallen off so dramatically that even the people like myself, who normally reserve their opinion on the Astros, saying things like, yes, the Astros haven't started well. They're notoriously slow starters, and they build their way up. This time, yes, there are caveats. Yes, the pitching has been decimated with injuries. 3 of their 5 starters are injured or have been injured for a long period of the start of the season. But this is a team that's coming to the end of the cycle. And yes, Altuve's playing well, but the magic that they once had, forget the scandals aside, they were an outstandingly good team. The scandals they had were built by people in a certain way. Those people are gone, and it leads me to believe that certain way they used to build the teams is no longer there. leading to you to look to a situation like this, where it doesn't seem to be in a great spot. You're spending big money on a closer in Josh Hader, and you already had a really good closer anyway. You then have the situation of the trade deadline. I don't know, we're jumping the gun, but at what point does this team and this front office kind of go, this is it, this is time? Keep a couple of pieces, but move on a couple of players. Are they sellers? Are they going to be sellers? Is this a prediction that we make? You know what? Let's do it. Let's go out. Let's go bold. At the trade deadline, the Houston Astros are going to be sellers in the market. Normally, they'd be buyers. They've got to find someone to take that huge Jose Abreu contract. No one's going to do it. Alex Bregman, what happens with him? Justin Verlander. I mean, do you look at it and just bite the bullet and go, we'll get rid? One of the best pitchers of all time. Arguably the best pitcher of this generation. But what good is he to a non-competing Astros team? The same way, what good was he in a non-competing Mets team? Who knows? Ultimately, I think the Astros cycle is over, or at the very least is coming to an end. And if we weren't so blinded by the expectation we had of previous years, we would have known this after the Rangers had beat them. When the Rangers beat them in the ALCS last year with such a convincing fashion, we should have looked at that and gone, maybe this is it. Maybe this is coming towards the end of time. But I've got to be honest, it's really fun to look at, and it's really fun to watch. 17, 16, and 15, Red Sox, Padres, Royals, perfectly fine middling teams. The Boston Red Sox are the stupidest team that have ever played the game. Don't take my word for it. Listen to Jared Carabas and his boys on his Red Sox podcast. They speak far more glowingly about the stupidity than I ever will. We'll speed it along a little bit. 14 the Reds with 14 and 11. 13 of the Mariners with 13 and 12. Joint 11th, the Blue Jays and the Rangers. I had a comment in my last Power Rankings video about the Rangers, and somebody kind of aggressively saying, why do people not talk more about the Rangers? I'll be honest, I'm not quite sure why they don't. Because they're still a really good team. They're the reigning champions, and they haven't really shown anything different from last year to tell you that they're falling away anytime soon. There might be better teams in the regular season than them, 100%. But at a 13-13 record, they're not awful. They're inconsistent, but they're not a bad team. No one's going to be sitting here going, why is no one piping them up for a World Series push again? Because they haven't really shown that level again. But could they go far in the playoffs? 100%. Could they win the division? 100%. It's a weak AL West this year. So maybe they do. Maybe we do need to talk about the Rangers a bit more. Diamondbacks are 10th. Cubs are 9th. The Guardians are 8th. The power and friendship team, where nothing seems to be very good, but they seem very good. It's a really odd dynamic there. 7th are the Rays. 8th are the 6th, are the Brewers, with a 16 and 8 start. I've kind of been really taken aback by the Brewers here. I have to say, they're really, really good. They're really, really good, and I don't know whether it was because they traded Corbin Burns in the off season, and everyone kind of looked at that and just went, well, that's them giving up. It's really good. They're second in the majors in batting average, on base percentage, and third in slugging